dog brings a puppy to the vet for help, but the moment she lays eyes on it, her blood runs cold. The puppy isn't just injured, it's something no one should have ever seen. With human-like paws and haunting eyes, this tiny creature unlocks a dark secret hiding in plain sight. And then, he walks in, a powerful man demanding it back. He claims it's his property. But why does the dog growl like it understands everything? As threats close in and the truth claws its way to the surface, one question could change everything. What do you do when the creature you're trying to save might not be a dog at all? You being here is a reminder. The quiet acts of love and kindness still matter. If you hold space for compassion, you're already part of this community. The autumn wind rattled the windows of Cedar Falls Veterinary Clinic as Dr. Rebecca Hartwell finished updating her accounts. The numbers on the computer screen made her stomach twist. 3 more families had switched to Mountain View Pet Hospital this month, lured by their flashy facilities and corporate discount programs. Rebecca rubbed her tired eyes and glanced at the framed veterinary license on her wall, dated 15 years ago. Back then, she dreamed of building something special in this small Montana town, a place where every animal would receive the best care, regardless of their owner's ability to pay. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Cedar Falls Veterinary Clinic, Dr. Hartwell speaking. Dr. Rebecca, it's Mrs. Peterson. Shadow's limping again, and I just can't afford Mountain View's prices. Rebecca's heart softened. Mrs. Peterson was a widow living on Social Security, and her elderly black lab was her only companion. Bring him in tomorrow morning. We'll work something out. After hanging up, Rebecca added another entry to her growing list of payment plans. Her accountant would scold her again, but she couldn't turn away animals in need. That's not why she'd become a vet. The afternoon brought a steady stream of routine appointments. Rebecca treated Mr. Johnson's arthritic golden retriever, gave vaccines to the Williams' new kitten, and removed stitches from the Cooper family's adventure-prone beagle. Each case reminded her why she loved her work, even as the financial pressure mounted. That should heal nicely, Rebecca told 12-year-old Jenny Cooper, running gentle fingers over her beagle's healed paw. Just keep him out of Mrs. Miller's rose bushes next time. Jenny giggled. I'll try, but Buddy has other ideas. As twilight approached, Rebecca began her closing routine. Her assistant, Maria, had already left for the day, leaving Rebecca alone with the overnight patients, 2 recovering cats and an elderly hamster. She was checking their medications when a powerful scratching at the front door made her jump. The scratching came again, more urgent this time. Rebecca hurried to the waiting room, flicking on the lights. Through the glass door, she saw a massive German shepherd, his dark fur silvered by moonlight. Something about his stance made her pause. There was an intelligence in his amber eyes that seemed almost human. The dog carried something in his mouth. Rebecca's heart stopped when she realized it was a small, motionless body. "Oh my God," she whispered, quickly unlocking the door. The German shepherd entered with deliberate steps, his eyes never leaving her face. He moved to the examination table and with surprising gentleness placed his burden down. Rebecca's trained hands immediately went to work, brushing mud from what appeared to be a puppy. But as she cleared away the dirt, she froze. The creature's features were unlike anything she'd ever seen. Though dog-like in basic shape, its fur pattern and facial structure were distinctly different, almost exotic. The German shepherd watched her intently, his posture protective but not threatening. When Rebecca reached for her stethoscope, he made a soft sound, not quite a whine, not quite a bark, that seemed almost like encouragement. "Don't worry, big guy. I'll take care of your friend," Rebecca murmured, though she wasn't sure what kind of care this unusual creature might need. Its heartbeat was steady but rapid, and its breathing seemed labored. As she worked, Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary emergency. The German shepherd's behavior was remarkable. He anticipated her movements, fetched supplies she glanced at before she could ask, and positioned himself to support the unconscious creature when needed. "You're not just any dog, are you?" she whispered. The shepherd met her gaze steadily, and Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in those eyes, something that spoke of secrets and sorrows too deep for words. The next hour passed in a blur of careful examination and treatment. The mysterious puppy-like creature had no obvious injuries, but its vital signs suggested exhaustion and stress. Rebecca set up a warming bed and began fluid therapy, all while the German Shepherd maintained his vigilant watch. As she worked, questions tumbled through her mind. What was this creature? Where had it come from? And who was this extraordinary dog who'd brought it to her? The mystery of it all should have frightened her. But instead, Rebecca felt a growing sense of purpose. "I don't know what's going on," she told the shepherd, "but your friend is stable now. You did the right thing bringing them here." The dog's tail wagged once, slowly, and he settled himself beside the treatment area. His posture made it clear he had no intention of leaving. Rebecca pulled up a stool, her own exhaustion forgotten in the face of this extraordinary situation. "Looks like we're in for an interesting night," she said softly. "I don't suppose you'd like to tell me your name?" The shepherd's ears perked forward, and for a moment, Rebecca could have sworn she saw a flicker of something like sorrow cross his face. But that was impossible, wasn't it? Just as impossible as the strange creature sleeping peacefully under her care, or the way this night had completely upended her ordinary world. Outside, the autumn wind continued to blow, rattling the windows of Cedar Falls Veterinary Clinic. But inside, in the quiet of the treatment room, Rebecca Hartwell sat watch with her unusual visitors, knowing somehow that her life would never be quite the same again. Rebecca's hands moved methodically over the small creature's body, her fingers gently probing beneath the mud-matted fur. 15 years of veterinary experience had taught her what to expect when examining an injured animal, but nothing in her training had prepared her for what she was discovering. "This can't be right," she muttered, reaching for a damp cloth to clean more of the mud away. The German shepherd, Zeus, as she'd started thinking of him based on his regal bearing, watched her every move with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. Under the bright examination lights, Rebecca's unease grew with each revelation. The creature's skull shape was wrong for a wolf cub, too rounded, with facial features that seemed almost deliberately designed to blur the line between canine and something else. Its jaw structure didn't match any species she'd ever encountered. She opened the creature's mouth gently, examining its teeth. Her breath caught. "The dental pattern is all wrong," she said aloud, more to steady herself than for Zeus's benefit. "The incisors are modified, and these molars—" She trailed off, noticing how Zeus's ears perked forward at her words. The creature's paws drew her attention next, and Rebecca felt her professional detachment slipping. What she'd initially taken for normal paw pads had an unsettling structure underneath. The digits were longer than they should be, almost finger-like, with joint articulation that reminded her more of human hands than animal paws. "This isn't possible," Rebecca whispered, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her digital camera. She needed to document this. The bone structure alone defied everything she knew about natural canine anatomy. It was as if someone had taken elements from different species and merged them together with impossible precision. Zeus made a soft whining sound, nudging her elbow. When she looked at him, his eyes seemed to hold a mixture of confirmation and concern. Rebecca had worked with thousands of dogs over her career, but she'd never seen one communicate so clearly, so purposefully. "You know what this is, don't you?" she asked him directly, surprising herself with the question. It felt foolish talking to a dog, as if he could understand complex thoughts. But everything about Zeus suggested he comprehended far more than he should. The German shepherd's response was remarkable. He moved to the other side of the examination table and used his nose to push her medical reference book toward her. The gesture was so deliberate, so human-like, that Rebecca took an involuntary step back. "This isn't natural," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This cub, if we can even call it that, it's some kind of hybrid. But that's not possible with current technology. The genetic manipulation required would be—" She stopped, her scientific mind rebelling against what her eyes were telling her. The creature's vital signs remained stable, but its severely malnourished condition was obvious now that she'd cleaned away more of the dirt. Its ribs showed clearly through its unusual fur, and its muscle tone suggested confined living conditions. This wasn't a wild animal. This was something that had been created and then neglected. Zeus's behavior grew more protective as she documented her findings. He positioned himself closer to the hybrid cub, though his demeanor toward Rebecca remained trusting. When she needed to draw blood for testing, he actually helped steady the cub's leg with his muzzle, displaying a level of comprehension that made Rebecca's head spin. "The blood work will tell us more," she said, labeling the samples with hands that had steadied as her professional training took over. "Though I'm not sure any normal tests will make sense with—" She gestured at the hybrid cub. "Whatever this is." Rebecca's mind raced through the implications. Someone in or near Cedar Falls was conducting sophisticated genetic experiments on animals. The level of scientific advancement needed to create such a hybrid was staggering and deeply troubling. This wasn't just a case of unusual breeding. This was fundamental genetic manipulation that crossed ethical and legal boundaries. The hybrid cub stirred slightly in its sleep, making a sound that was neither quite canine nor quite human. Zeus immediately moved closer, offering comfort with a gentle touch of his nose. The interaction seemed to confirm Rebecca's growing suspicions. Zeus wasn't just any dog who'd found an injured creature. He was connected to whatever facility had created this hybrid, and he'd chosen to bring it to her. "You brought it here for a reason," Rebecca said, meeting Zeus's amber gaze. "You wanted someone to know about this, didn't you?" Zeus's tail wagged once, slowly, and he placed his paw deliberately on her hand. The gesture felt like a pact, an understanding between them. Rebecca looked down at the sleeping hybrid, then back at Zeus, and knew she couldn't ignore what she'd discovered. Her veterinary clinic, already struggling to survive against corporate competition, was now harboring evidence of illegal genetic experimentation. The rational choice would be to report this to authorities immediately. But as she watched Zeus's protective stance over the malnourished hybrid, she realized this situation required more than just rational choices. "Okay," she said softly, making her decision. "First, we get this little one healthy. Then we figure out what's really going on here." She began preparing a secure recovery space in the isolation ward, aware that Zeus followed her movements with apparent approval. The hybrid cub would need careful monitoring and a specialized feeding plan to address its malnutrition. Rebecca's mind was already working through treatment options, even as questions multiplied. What other genetic modifications might affect its care? What kind of nutrition would best suit its unique physiology? And perhaps most importantly, who had created it, and what would they do when they discovered it was missing? The sound of the clinic's front door slamming open made Rebecca jump. Heavy footsteps echoed through the quiet building, followed by the distinct click of expensive shoes on linoleum. Zeus's ears instantly flattened against his head, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Before Rebecca could react, 3 men burst into the examination room. In front stood a tall figure with perfectly styled silver hair and a tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She recognized him immediately from recent news coverage: Marcus Blackwood, the wealthy businessman whose exotic animal breeding facilities were under federal investigation. 2 burly men in dark security uniforms flanked him, their hands resting on holstered weapons. The sight made Rebecca's blood run cold, but she forced herself to stand straight and steady. "That's my property you're harboring, Doctor." "Hartwell," Blackwood said, his voice as smooth and expensive as his appearance. His cold blue eyes fixed first on Zeus, then on the hybrid cub still unconscious on the examination table. Both of them, in fact. Rebecca stepped forward, positioning herself between Blackwood and her patients. "This is a private medical facility, Mr. Blackwood. You can't just barge in here with armed men." "Oh, but I can." His smile never reached his eyes. "You see, Zeus here escaped from my research compound early this morning, taking with him a very valuable specimen. I've already contacted the local authorities about the theft. Zeus's growl grew louder, and he moved to stand beside Rebecca. His massive form pressed against her leg, a solid warmth that helped steady her nerves. Specimen? Rebecca's voice shook with anger. This creature is severely malnourished. Whatever research you're conducting, it clearly involves animal abuse. Blackwood's pleasant expression hardened. That creature represents millions of dollars in genetic research. Its physical condition is irrelevant compared to its scientific value. He snapped his fingers at one of the guards. Secure them both. The guard took a step forward, but Zeus's threatening snarl made him hesitate. Rebecca noticed how Blackwood's eyes narrowed at the dog's behavior. Zeus, Blackwood said sharply, stand down. You know better than to disobey. But Zeus didn't move. Instead, he positioned himself more firmly between Rebecca and the armed men, his intent clear. He would protect both her and the hybrid cub. Fascinating, Blackwood murmured, studying Zeus with an unsettling intensity. The loyalty protocols appear to have degraded further than we thought. He turned to Rebecca. Dr. Hartwell, you're interfering with legitimate research operations. That creature is proprietary technology, developed in my private facilities. Legitimate? Rebecca's voice rose. I've read about your breeding facilities in the news. The FBI is investigating you for illegal exotic animal trafficking. And this, she gestured to the hybrid cub, this goes way beyond illegal breeding. You're conducting unauthorized genetic experiments. Something dangerous flashed in Blackwood's eyes. You have no idea what you're talking about. My work is beyond your comprehension. He straightened his already immaculate suit jacket. I'll give you one chance to hand over both Zeus and the specimen willingly. Otherwise, things will become very unpleasant. Rebecca glanced at the armed guards, then at Zeus's protective stance, and made her decision. Get out of my clinic, Mr. Blackwood. If you want to take these animals, you'll need a court order. Blackwood's pleasant mask cracked completely. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I own half this town. One phone call, and your little veterinary practice will be buried in health code violations and licensing reviews. Are you threatening me? Rebecca stood taller, drawing strength from Zeus's steady presence. Merely stating facts. Blackwood's voice turned ice cold. I've spent 10 years and billions of dollars on this research. I won't let some small-town veterinarian interfere. He nodded to his guards. Take them. Use whatever force necessary. The guards drew their weapons, but Zeus moved faster than anyone expected. He lunged forward with a snarl that sent both men stumbling backward. His massive body blocked the entrance to the examination room, teeth bared in clear warning. Blackwood's face contorted with rage. Zeus, stand down immediately! But Zeus's only response was another threatening growl. His amber eyes locked onto Blackwood with an intensity that seemed almost human in its defiance. This is your last warning, Doctor. Hartwell, Blackwood said, his composure cracking further. That creature is my property. Everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed, it's all led to this breakthrough. I won't let you ruin it. Rebecca saw something beneath his anger then, a desperate, almost maniacal gleam in his eyes. This wasn't just about money or research. There was something more personal driving his obsession. Get out, Rebecca said firmly, before I call the police and report armed men threatening a local business owner. Blackwood stared at her for a long moment, his face a mask of cold fury. Finally, he adjusted his suit cuffs with deliberate precision. This isn't over. You have no idea what you're involving yourself in. He turned to his guards. We're leaving. For now. Zeus maintained his protective stance until all three men had backed out of the examination room. The clinic's front door slammed again, and Rebecca heard car engines roaring to life outside. Only then did Zeus relax slightly, though he moved to check on the hybrid cub first. The creature had slept through the entire confrontation, still weak from its ordeal. Rebecca's legs felt shaky as the adrenaline began to fade. She sank onto her office chair, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus Blackwood hadn't just confirmed her suspicions about illegal genetic experimentation. He'd revealed himself as a dangerous man, willing to use force to protect his secrets. Zeus pressed his head against her hand, offering comfort. She scratched behind his ears automatically, her mind racing through implications. By refusing to hand over Zeus and the hybrid cub, she'd made herself a target for whatever criminal operation Blackwood was running. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered. Zeus's intelligent eyes met hers, and she knew there was no turning back now. Whatever Blackwood was doing, whatever he'd created in those secret facilities of his, it had to be stopped. She just hoped she'd have time to figure out her next move before he made good on his threats. A tiny whimper broke the tense silence that had fallen over the clinic. Rebecca rushed to the examination table where the hybrid cub was finally stirring. Its eyes fluttered open, revealing an unsettling mix of wolf-like amber and something disturbingly human in their depth. Then it began to cry. Rebecca felt her heart stop. The sound wasn't the high-pitched yipping of a wolf pup or the bark of a young dog. It was the unmistakable wail of a human infant, rising and falling in desperate, hungry sobs that made her maternal instincts surge. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for the creature. Zeus whined softly, nudging her arm as if encouraging her to help. The hybrid cub's cries grew stronger, echoing through the empty clinic. Rebecca quickly warmed some milk replacement formula, trying to keep her hands steady as the implications of what she was hearing sank in. Whatever Blackwood had created in his laboratories, it went far beyond simple genetic manipulation. This was something that crossed ethical lines she hadn't even known could be crossed. The front door chimed again. Rebecca's heart jumped into her throat, but it wasn't Blackwood's armed guards returning. Instead, a well-dressed woman in her 50s entered, carrying a thick manila envelope. "Doctor, Rebecca Hartwell?" The woman's professional smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Sandra Morton from First State Bank. I have some rather urgent paperwork regarding your accounts." Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. The hybrid cub's cries had quieted to soft whimpers as it suckled the warm formula, but the creature's presence felt like a ticking time bomb in the room. "I'm with a patient right now," Rebecca said carefully, angling herself to block the examination table from view. "Could this wait?" "I'm afraid not." Sandra opened the envelope. "Mr. Blackwood has recently acquired a controlling interest in First State Bank. He's requested an immediate review of all high-risk loans." She pulled out a stack of documents, including your clinic's mortgage and your home's land lease. The floor seemed to tilt under Rebecca's feet. "What?" "According to our records, you're 3 months behind on your clinic's mortgage payments," Sandra continued, her voice professionally detached. "And the land lease for your home is up for renewal next month. Given your current financial situation, the bank has concerns about continuing these arrangements." Rebecca's throat went dry. "Those payments were deferred. I have an agreement with the bank." "That agreement is under review." Sandra laid the papers on the front counter. "Mr. Blackwood has expressed personal interest in this matter. He asked me to inform you that you have 24 hours to resolve certain private business matters with him. Otherwise, the bank will be forced to begin foreclosure proceedings." The hybrid cub made another eerily human sound, and Sandra's eyes narrowed. "What kind of animal is that?" "A routine patient," Rebecca said quickly. "Please tell Mr. Blackwood that threatening my livelihood won't change anything. What he's doing is wrong." Sandra's professional mask cracked slightly, showing a flash of genuine concern. "Dr. Hartwell, I don't know what's going on between you and Mr. Blackwood, but he's not someone you want as an enemy. He doesn't just own the bank. He has connections with the county commissioners, the health department, even the state veterinary board." As if to emphasize the point, Rebecca's phone buzzed. A text message from the state board announced a surprise inspection of her clinic scheduled for tomorrow morning. 24 hours, Doctor." "Hartwell," Sandra said, heading for the door. "Mr. Blackwood wanted you to understand exactly what's at stake here." After she left, Rebecca sank onto her office chair, feeling the walls closing in. The hybrid cub had finished its formula and was watching her with those unsettling eyes, making soft cooing sounds that no wolf pup should be capable of producing. Her phone rang, displaying an unknown number. With trembling fingers, she answered it. "Have I made myself clear?" Blackwood's smooth voice filled her ear. "Everything you've worked for, everything you've built, it can all disappear with a single phone call." "Why?" Rebecca demanded. "Why is this creature so important to you?" There was a long pause. When Blackwood spoke again, something had changed in his voice, a crack in his polished veneer that revealed raw pain underneath. 10 years ago, I lost my son Tommy in an accident," he said softly. "He was only 8 years old. Do you know what it's like, Doctor? Hartwell, to hold your child's broken body and know that all your wealth, all your power, means nothing in the face of death." Rebecca's blood ran cold as understanding began to dawn. "I've spent a decade and billions of dollars advancing genetic science beyond what anyone thought possible," Blackwood continued. "That creature you're protecting represents the culmination of all that work. The first successful hybrid of human and wolf DNA, with enhanced regenerative capabilities, a stepping stone to something greater." "You're trying to bring your son back," Rebecca whispered, horror creeping through her veins. "I'm trying to defeat death itself." Blackwood's voice hardened again. "That specimen is crucial to my research. I've sacrificed too much to let anyone interfere now." The hybrid cub reached out with one of its unsettlingly human-like paws, grasping Rebecca's finger with surprising strength. Zeus pressed against her legs, a solid reminder of his protection. 24 hours, Doctor," Hartwell, Blackwood said. "Return what's mine, or watch everything you care about crumble. Your clinic, your home, your reputation, I'll take it all. And then I'll still get what I want. Only you'll have nothing left to show for your misguided principles." The line went dead. Rebecca looked down at the hybrid cub, its impossible existence suddenly cast in a new and terrible light. This wasn't just about illegal breeding or animal abuse anymore. She was up against a grieving father's obsession, backed by unlimited resources and a willingness to cross any ethical line in pursuit of the impossible. The creature made another soft, human-like sound, and Rebecca felt tears spring to her eyes. What kind of horrors had Blackwood committed in his quest to defeat death? How many failed experiments had there been before this one? And what would he do to anyone who stood in his way? Rebecca couldn't sleep. The hybrid cub was safely tucked away in a large kennel in the clinic's isolation room, but her mind kept racing with thoughts of Blackwood's threats. Outside her office window, where she had decided to spend the night watching over her unusual patient, the Montana darkness pressed against the glass like black velvet. Zeus hadn't left the clinic either. He lay near the kennel, his amber eyes alert and watchful. 2 other dogs had joined him earlier in the evening, a scarred Rottweiler with a distinctive limp and a Belgian Malinois missing part of one ear. Like Zeus, they moved with an unnatural precision that made Rebecca increasingly certain they weren't ordinary strays. The wall clock ticked past 2 in the morning. Rebecca rubbed her tired eyes, reaching for her cold coffee. That's when she heard it, the soft scrape of metal against metal coming from the back door. Zeus was on his feet instantly, not barking, but moving with deadly purpose toward the sound. The other 2 dogs flanked him, their movements synchronized as if they were executing a practiced military maneuver. Rebecca's hands shook as she dialed 911, but before she could press call, the back window shattered. 2 black-clad figures slipped through the broken glass, while another worked on the door lock. "Get the specimen," one of them whispered. "Neutralize any resistance." The intruders carried what looked like tranquilizer guns, but Rebecca glimpsed real pistols holstered at their hips. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she crouched behind her desk, frantically pressing the emergency call button. Zeus struck first. He launched himself at the nearest intruder with frightening intelligence, not going for an obvious attack, but instead clamping down on the tranquilizer gun and wrenching it away. The Rottweiler and Malinois moved in perfect coordination, one going low, the other high, taking down the second intruder before he could aim his weapon. The third man burst through the back door, raising his gun. Rebecca screamed a warning, but Zeus was already moving. He knocked the man's arm up, sending the dart into the ceiling. The Malinois clamped down on the intruder's leg, while the Rottweiler went for his weapon hand. What happened next left Rebecca breathless. The dogs weren't fighting like animals, they were using tactics. They protected each other's flanks, created diversions, and targeted vulnerable points with surgical precision. When one of the intruders pulled his real gun, Zeus knocked his partner into him, sending the shot wide. The security alarm finally began blaring, its red lights casting strange shadows across the clinic floor. The intruders retreated, dragging their injured companion. They vanished into the darkness, leaving behind scattered equipment and blood drops on the linoleum. Rebecca's legs gave out, and she slid down the wall to sit on the floor. Zeus immediately came to her side, his intelligent eyes filled with concern. He pressed his warm body against her shaking form while the other dogs secured the perimeter, checking every corner of the clinic with methodical thoroughness. "You're not just dogs, are you?" Rebecca whispered, running her trembling fingers through Zeus's fur. "What did Blackwood do to you?" The Rottweiler returned with one of the dropped tranquilizer guns in his mouth, placing it carefully at Rebecca's feet. The Malinois stood guard at the broken window, his posture alert but relaxed, like a trained soldier after the immediate danger had passed. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Rebecca looked at the three dogs, really looked at them, and saw the truth she'd been avoiding. Their scars weren't just from abuse, they were surgical marks. The precise way they moved, the complex strategies they employed, the obvious chain of command with Zeus in charge, these weren't escaped guard dogs. They were something else entirely. "He experimented on you too, didn't he?" Rebecca's voice broke. "Like the hybrid cub, he changed you somehow." Zeus met her gaze with those haunting amber eyes, and for a moment, Rebecca could have sworn she saw human grief in their depths. The hybrid cub whimpered from its kennel, and all three dogs turned toward the sound with protective intensity. The police cruisers pulled up outside, flooding the clinic with rotating blue light. Rebecca knew she should get up, should explain about the break-in, but her mind was spinning with horrifying possibilities. How many animals had Blackwood experimented on? How had he given them this level of intelligence and coordination? And what was she going to do now that she knew the truth? Zeus nudged her gently, helping her to her feet. The Rottweiler and Malinois melted into the shadows as flashlight beams swept through the broken window. But Zeus stayed by her side, a solid presence that somehow made her feel both safer and more terrified than she'd ever been in her life. Because now she understood. This wasn't just about saving one impossible hybrid cub. She had stumbled into something much darker, a conspiracy of illegal experiments and transformed animals that defied everything she thought she knew about science and nature. And somewhere in his compound, Blackwood was probably creating more of them, driven by his obsession to conquer death itself. Rebecca straightened her shoulders as the police officers approached the front door. Zeus pressed against her leg, reminding her that she wasn't facing this alone. Whatever Blackwood had done to these animals, they had chosen to fight for her tonight. They had protected her and the hybrid cub, displaying a moral courage that was all too human. The officers' flashlights illuminated the destruction, broken glass, scattered medical supplies, and the unmistakable evidence of the violent struggle. Rebecca took a deep breath, knowing that every word she said next would have to be carefully chosen. She couldn't reveal the full truth about Zeus and his companions, but she also couldn't pretend this was a simple break-in attempt. She had less than 24 hours left before Blackwood made good on his threats to destroy her life. But after witnessing Zeus and the other dogs in action, she knew she couldn't give in. Whatever the cost, she had to protect these extraordinary creatures and expose the terrible experiments that had created them. Rebecca's hands trembled as she stared at her phone, James Chen's contact information glowing on the screen. Dawn was breaking outside the clinic windows, casting long shadows across the floor where Zeus still kept his protective vigil. The other two dogs had disappeared before the police arrived, but Rebecca knew they were watching from somewhere nearby. She hadn't spoken to James in 5 years, not since that rainy evening when he'd chosen a prestigious research position in Boston over their life together in Montana. The memory still stung, but right now she needed his expertise more than she needed to protect her heart. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the call button. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Doctor." "Chen, speaking." "James?" Her voice cracked slightly. "It's Rebecca. Rebecca Hartwell." There was a long pause on the other end. "Rebecca. This is unexpected." "I know, and I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but I'm dealing with something that requires your specific expertise. Something impossible." Zeus moved closer, resting his head on her knee as if lending her strength. The hybrid cub made soft whimpering sounds from its kennel, sounds that still sent chills down her spine with their almost human quality. "What kind of impossible?" James asked, his tone shifting from personal to professional. Rebecca closed her eyes. "The kind that shouldn't exist. The kind that could get me killed for even knowing about it. James, I need someone I can trust. Someone who understands genetic research. Please." She heard him take a sharp breath. "Are you in danger?" "Yes," she said simply. "And so is a creature that needs our help. I can't explain everything over the phone, but I'm looking at something that appears to be a hybrid between a wolf cub and," she lowered her voice, "something human." "That's not possible," James said immediately, but she could hear the scientist in him becoming intrigued. "The genetic barriers between species." "I know what's supposed to be possible," Rebecca interrupted. "I'm looking at proof that someone's broken those rules. Someone with enough money and power to send armed men to try to steal it back last night." There was another pause, longer this time. "Armed men? Rebecca, what have you gotten yourself into?" She glanced at Zeus, who was watching her with those unnaturally intelligent eyes. "Something bigger than I can handle alone. I need your help, James. Whatever happened between us, this is more important." She heard him moving around, papers rustling. "I have a conference presentation tomorrow morning. I could fly out after." "I might not have until tomorrow," Rebecca cut in. "The man behind this, Marcus Blackwood, he's given me 24 hours to hand over the hybrid. After that," she swallowed hard, "he owns my mortgage, my land lease, everything." "Blackwood?" James's voice sharpened. "Rebecca, there are rumors in the research community about his private experiments. Nothing proven, but dark stuff. Genetic manipulation, forbidden cross-species trials. Then you understand why I can't let him have this creature back. Please, James, I know it's asking a lot." She heard him sigh, then the sound of typing. "There's a flight leaving Logan Airport in 2 hours. I can be there by early afternoon." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. "I'm not the same person you knew 5 years ago, Rebecca." "Neither am I," she replied. "But right now, I need the scientist, not the man who broke my heart." The words hung between them for a moment before James cleared his throat. "Text me the clinic's address. And Rebecca, be careful. If Blackwood is really involved—" "I know," she said. "Just hurry." After ending the call, Rebecca leaned back in her chair, emotionally drained. Zeus nudged her hand, and she managed a weak smile. "Well, that was fun, bringing my ex-boyfriend into this mess. What could possibly go wrong?" The hybrid cub chose that moment to make another one of its haunting cry whimpers, reminding her exactly why she'd swallowed her pride to make that call. She stood and walked to the kennel, Zeus following close behind. The tiny creature looked up at her with eyes that held far too much awareness. Its impossible features, the almost human hands, the facial structure that wasn't quite wolf or human, seemed even more pronounced in the morning light. Help is coming, she whispered, both to the hybrid and herself. Someone who might actually understand what was done to you. To all of you. Zeus's ears perked up at the sound of distant barking, probably his companion signaling something. He gave Rebecca's hand a gentle lick before slipping away to check the perimeter again. Rebecca watched him go, then turned back to the hybrid cub. I just hope James gets here before Blackwood makes his next move, because something tells me last night's break-in attempt was just the beginning. She glanced at the clock. 18 hours left until Blackwood's deadline. 18 hours to figure out how to protect an impossible creature and expose a powerful man's illegal experiments. Oh, and now she dragged James into it too, reopening old wounds in the process. But looking at the hybrid cub's trusting eyes, Rebecca knew she'd make the same choice again. Whatever pain seeing James might bring, whatever dangers Blackwood might pose, she had to protect this innocent life. It was what she'd sworn to do when she became a veterinarian, even if she'd never imagined treating anything quite like this. She just hoped James would be able to help her understand exactly what, or who, she was trying to save. James Chen stood over the examination table, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the bright medical lights as he studied the blood sample through Rebecca's clinic microscope. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel, and not just because of what they might discover. The cell structure is unlike anything I've ever seen, he muttered, making notes on a pad beside him. The chromosomal count is impossible. Rebecca hovered nearby, trying to maintain professional distance despite the familiar scent of his cologne, bringing back memories she'd rather forget. Impossible how? The number of chromosomes falls between human and canine ranges. He adjusted the microscope's focus. It shouldn't be viable. This creature shouldn't exist. Zeus watched from his spot by the door, his intelligent eyes following their every move. The hybrid cub lay sedated on the examination table, its chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Yet here it is, Rebecca said softly, reaching out to stroke the creature's fur. Breathing, living, suffering. James straightened up, rubbing his tired eyes. I'll need to run more sophisticated tests to be certain, but based on these preliminary results, he hesitated, as if afraid to voice his conclusions. Just say it, James. There are clear human genetic markers present. This isn't just some exotic breeding experiment. Someone, Blackwood, has successfully combined human and wolf DNA to create a viable hybrid. Rebecca felt her stomach turn. She'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made the horror feel so much more real. How is that even possible? It shouldn't be. James began pacing, his professional demeanor cracking to reveal genuine distress. The ethical implications alone. This goes against every principle of genetic research, every law, every shred of human decency. But why? Rebecca asked, though she dreaded the answer. What could possibly be worth? Money, James cut in, his voice hard. There are always people willing to pay for the impossible. Wealthy collectors who view exotic pets as status symbols. He stopped pacing and met her eyes. Think about it. What would certain individuals pay for a creature that combines human intelligence with animal loyalty? Rebecca felt sick. You're saying these hybrids are being created as pets? For rich people? Pets, status symbols, proof of power. Who knows what twisted justification Blackwood sells along with them? James turned back to his notes, flipping through pages of test results. Based on the genetic markers, I'd estimate this isn't a first-generation hybrid. The gene splicing is too sophisticated, too stable. Blackwood must have been perfecting this process for years. Which means there are more, Rebecca whispered. Many more. Zeus whined softly from his post, and both humans turned to look at him. The German shepherd's behavior suddenly made even more sense. His intelligence, his protective nature, his understanding of the situation. He's one too, isn't he? Rebecca asked. A different kind of hybrid, more dog than human, but still. James studied Zeus with new understanding. It would explain a lot. The varying degrees of human DNA could create different types of hybrids, some more animal-like, some more... He glanced at the sedated cub. Some more human. Rebecca sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the implications. How many facilities do you think Blackwood has? How many creatures are suffering through these experiments? Given the sophistication of the genetic work, the resources required, James did some quick calculations. He'd need multiple locations, different facilities for breeding, testing, training, dozens of creatures at least, probably more. We have to stop him, Rebecca said firmly. We have to save them. James ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Rebecca, this is bigger than us. Blackwood has money, power, connections. He's already threatened you once. So what? We just let him continue creating and selling sentient beings as pets? She stood up, anger overriding her earlier discomfort around James. These creatures have human DNA, human intelligence. They feel pain, fear, loneliness. We can't abandon them. I'm not saying we should, James's voice softened, but we need to be smart about this. I have contacts in the FBI's science division. If we can document everything, gather concrete evidence. We only have 18 hours before Blackwood comes back, Rebecca reminded him. He'll destroy everything I have if I don't hand over the hybrid. James stepped closer, close enough that Rebecca could see the concern in his dark eyes. Then we'll work fast. I'll call my contacts now. Get them moving. We just need to hold out long enough for help to arrive. The hybrid cub stirred on the table, making that haunting, almost human whimper. Rebecca immediately moved to check its vital signs, her veterinary training taking over. Its temperature is elevated, she reported, professional focus momentarily displacing her horror at their discoveries. We need to start antibiotics and fluids. James nodded, falling into their old rhythm of working together despite the years apart. He helped her set up an IV while she prepared the medications, their movements synchronized as if they'd never stopped being a team. As they worked to stabilize the hybrid, Rebecca couldn't help but think about all the other creatures in Blackwood's facilities. How many more were suffering? How many had already died in his pursuit of the impossible? Zeus watched them work, his eyes holding secrets they were only beginning to understand. The full scope of Blackwood's operation was becoming clear, and it was more horrifying than Rebecca had imagined. This wasn't just about saving one hybrid cub anymore. It was about exposing a criminal empire built on the suffering of creatures that should never have existed. Creatures that were, in some ways, partly human. The weight of that knowledge settled heavy on her shoulders as she checked the hybrid's vital signs again. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. She and James were now part of something much bigger and more dangerous than either of them had expected when this day began. While the hybrid cub slept peacefully under the warm medical lights, Rebecca and James turned their attention to Zeus. The German shepherd sat patiently as James drew a small blood sample, showing none of the usual anxiety most dogs displayed during medical procedures. It's remarkable, James said, studying Zeus's blood under the microscope. The genetic modifications are more subtle than the cub's, but they're definitely there. His neural structures have been enhanced significantly. Rebecca knelt beside Zeus, looking into his amber eyes. You understand everything we're saying, don't you? Zeus held her gaze and deliberately nodded his head once, then twice. Rebecca gasped, even though she'd suspected as much. It was one thing to theorize about his intelligence, quite another to see such clear confirmation. That's incredible, James whispered, abandoning his scientific detachment. Zeus, can you communicate with other animals too? The shepherd stood up and walked to the window, pawing at it while looking at them meaningfully. Through the glass, they could see several dogs and cats gathering in the clinic's back lot, far more strays than Rebecca usually saw. They've been showing up all evening, Rebecca realized. I thought it was strange, but... She turned to Zeus. You called them here, didn't you? For protection? Zeus barked once softly, and the animals outside responded in kind. A coordinated chorus that sent chills down Rebecca's spine. "He's organized them," James said, amazement clear in his voice. "He's created a network of animal allies." Rebecca remembered the break-in attempt earlier. "That's how you coordinated the defense against Blackwood's men. You brought other dogs to help." Zeus walked back to them, then gently took Rebecca's sleeve in his mouth and led her to the hybrid cub. He touched his nose to the cub's fur, then looked at Rebecca with an expression that seemed almost pleading. "You brought the cub to me specifically," Rebecca said slowly, understanding dawning. "You knew I could help. You've been watching my clinic, haven't you?" Zeus nodded again, then used his paw to point at the wall where Rebecca displayed her veterinary credentials and humanitarian awards. James adjusted his glasses, clearly stunned. "He assessed you, your skills, your character. He made a conscious choice to trust you with something precious." "But why me?" Rebecca asked Zeus directly. "There are other vets, other clinics." Zeus walked to her desk and pawed at an old newspaper clipping she'd framed, a story about her refusing to euthanize animals from a hoarding case, instead working overtime to save them all. "Because you knew I wouldn't give up on the cub," Rebecca whispered, emotion thick in her throat. "You knew I'd fight for it, no matter what." James moved closer, his scientific curiosity evident. "Zeus, how long have you been planning this? How many others like you are there in Blackwood's facilities?" The shepherd went to the examination room door and scratched at it 8 times, then looked at them meaningfully. "8 facilities?" James asked. Zeus nodded. Rebecca felt her heart sink. 8 different locations where these experiments are happening, where animals are being... She couldn't finish the thought. Zeus returned to the hybrid cub, gently nuzzling its fur with a distinctly paternal gesture. His eyes, when he looked back at them, held such profound sadness that Rebecca felt tears well up in her own. "You're not just trying to save the cub," she realized. "You're trying to stop all of it, to save everyone still trapped in those facilities." The German shepherd's posture straightened, and something fierce and determined replaced the sadness in his eyes. He walked to James's laptop, where they'd been documenting their findings, and placed his paw deliberately on the keyboard. "Evidence," James said. "You're helping us gather evidence. You understand that's what we need to stop Blackwood legally." Zeus barked softly in confirmation, then went to the cabinet where Rebecca kept blank USB drives. He nosed at the drawer until she opened it. "You know where we can find more proof," Rebecca said. "Files, documents, research data." "This is extraordinary," James breathed. "Zeus isn't just an experiment. He's become an active agent working against Blackwood's operation. He's been planning this, coordinating with other animals, choosing his moments." Zeus returned to them and sat down, his bearing almost regal despite his 4-legged form. There was nothing animal-like about the intelligence in his eyes now, nothing simple about the way he'd orchestrated events to bring them all together. Rebecca knelt beside him again, placing a gentle hand on his fur. "We won't let you down," she promised. "Whatever evidence you can help us find, whatever we need to do to stop Blackwood, we're with you." The shepherd leaned into her touch, and for a moment, the weight of all he must have endured showed in his posture. Then he straightened again, alert and ready, every inch the leader he'd become. James was already pulling up satellite maps on his laptop. "We need to document everything. Zeus, can you show us where the other facilities are?" Zeus moved to the computer, using his nose to point at specific locations while James marked them. Each tap of his muzzle represented another site of unthinkable experiments, another place where creatures like the hybrid cub suffered. Rebecca watched them work, her mind racing with the implications of what they'd discovered. Zeus wasn't just an escaped experiment. He was a strategist, a protector, a being of remarkable intelligence who'd chosen to trust her with his resistance against Blackwood's cruelty. The responsibility felt enormous, but looking at the sleeping cub and the proud shepherd beside her, she knew they'd made the right choice. They had a little over 17 hours before Blackwood returned. But now they had something they hadn't before, an ally who understood the full scope of what they faced, who could help them gather the evidence they needed. Zeus had transformed from victim to leader, and with his help, they might actually have a chance to bring Blackwood's entire operation crashing down. The morning sun had barely risen when Rebecca heard the rumble of engines outside her clinic. Through the window, she watched 3 white vans marked Animal Control pull into the parking lot, followed by Blackwood's sleek black sedan. "They're here," she called to James, who was securing their evidence and research data. Zeus stood alert beside her, his posture tense, as Blackwood emerged from his car, wearing an expensive suit and a triumphant smile. Behind him, men in Animal Control uniforms filed out of the vans, but Rebecca noticed their tactical boots and the way they moved with military precision. "Those aren't real Animal Control officers," James whispered, joining her at the window. "No," Rebecca agreed. "They're mercenaries." Blackwood strode to the clinic's door, flanked by 2 men carrying official-looking briefcases. The bell chimed as they entered, and Rebecca felt her heart pound as she faced them. "Dr. Hartwell," Blackwood said smoothly, "I trust you've reconsidered your position regarding my property." "The hybrid cub isn't your property," Rebecca stated firmly. "And neither is Zeus." Blackwood's smile didn't waver as one of his men handed him a document. "Actually, as of 8 o'clock this morning, this entire clinic and everything in it belongs to me." He held out the court order. "Judge Matthews was quite understanding about my need to seize this facility due to severe code violations and suspected illegal activity." Rebecca's hand shook as she read the document. It looked completely legitimate, with official seals and a judge's signature. "This is impossible. You can't just—" "I can and I have," Blackwood cut her off. "The local authorities are quite cooperative when properly motivated. Now step aside." James moved forward, his voice steady despite his obvious anger. "This won't hold up. We have evidence of your experiments, proof of what you've been doing." "Do you?" Blackwood's eyes glittered dangerously. "My men will be conducting a thorough search of these premises. I doubt they'll find anything incriminating." Outside, more vehicles arrived. Local police cars, their lights flashing. Rebecca felt the walls closing in until she heard Zeus bark sharply. The sound carried an unmistakable command. Through the windows, she saw movement everywhere. Dogs of all sizes emerged from between buildings. Cats appeared on rooftops and fences. Even birds gathered on nearby power lines, their eyes fixed on the clinic. Zeus barked again, and the response was immediate. Dogs began howling in unison. Cats yowled, birds screeched. A cacophony of animal voices that made Blackwood's mercenaries shift nervously. "What is this?" Blackwood demanded, his composure cracking slightly. Zeus stood between Rebecca and Blackwood, his amber eyes blazing with intelligence and determination. More animals appeared every second, surrounding the clinic in a living barrier of fur and feathers. "They're with him," Rebecca realized aloud, watching Zeus coordinate the gathering army. "Every animal in Cedar Falls, he's called them all here." James stepped closer to her, his voice low. "This is going to turn ugly fast. Blackwood won't back down easily." As if confirming James's words, Blackwood pulled out his phone. "Bring in everything. Everyone. Now!" He turned to Rebecca, all pretense of civility gone. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Dr. Hartwell, but you're about to find out." Zeus growled, a sound filled with such human-like fury that even Blackwood's mercenaries took a step back. The animals outside responded, their collective voice rising to a threatening crescendo. The battle lines were drawn. On one side stood Blackwood, with his false documents and armed men. On the other, Rebecca, James, and Zeus led an army of every animal in town. The morning sun cast long shadows through the clinic windows as both sides prepared for the confrontation that would decide everything. The chaos erupted with frightening speed. Blackwood's mercenaries moved to secure the building's exits, but Zeus had already set his plan in motion. From every alley and backyard in Cedar Falls, animals emerged with purpose. Stray dogs formed organized packs, moving with military precision that mirrored their opponents. Cats slunk along rooftops, their eyes gleaming as they positioned themselves strategically above the mercenaries. "This is impossible," James whispered, watching through a window as a group of German shepherds, clearly escaped from Blackwood's facility, took up defensive positions around the clinic's main entrance. Rebecca worked quickly, pulling heavy metal cabinets across the back door while James secured the windows. "Zeus planned this," she said, watching the massive shepherd directing the animal army with sharp barks and deliberate movements. "He knew we'd need help." Outside, the first clash began. A mercenary tried to approach the clinic's side entrance, only to find his path blocked by a wall of snarling dogs. When he reached for his weapon, 3 cats dropped from the roof onto his shoulders, sending him stumbling backward with startled shouts. "Get those animals under control!" Blackwood roared from behind his protective line of guards. "Use whatever force necessary!" The words had barely left his mouth when a flock of crows descended, diving at the mercenaries' heads and forcing them to duck for cover. Every attempt to approach the clinic was met with coordinated resistance from multiple species working in perfect harmony. Inside, Rebecca converted her examination room into a makeshift triage center. As the confrontation escalated, injured animals began appearing at a small window James had left accessible. "They're bringing their wounded to me," Rebecca realized, treating a dog's pepper spray injury while others waited patiently. James worked frantically at Rebecca's office computer, documenting the incredible scene outside while trying to reach his contacts. "The local authorities are compromised," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "But I have friends at the FBI. If we can just hold out long enough." A loud crash from the front of the building made them both jump. The mercenaries had brought up riot shields, trying to force their way through the animal blockade. But Zeus had anticipated this too. A group of larger dogs hit the shields low, while smaller ones darted between their legs. The formation broke apart in chaos. "Look!" Rebecca pointed through the window. More animals were arriving, not just strays, but pets from all over town. Dogs pulled free of their leashes to join the defense. Cats slipped out of houses. Even horses from nearby farms had broken free of their paddocks, forming an imposing barrier around the clinic's perimeter. Zeus moved through it all like a general commanding his troops, his amber eyes blazing with intelligence as he coordinated the defense. When a mercenary managed to break through toward a side door, Zeus personally led the counterattack, his powerful form launching through the air to drive the man back. Rebecca worked steadily, treating the injured animals that made it inside while keeping the hybrid cub secure. James alternated between documenting the extraordinary events and reaching out to every contact he had, searching for someone who could help them against Blackwood's influence. "This is like nothing I've ever seen," James said, recording video of the animals working in perfect synchronization. "Zeus isn't just smart, he's created an actual army. He's using tactical strategies that shouldn't be possible for any animal." The siege continued as morning turned to midday, neither side willing to back down. The animals held their ground with unwavering determination, following Zeus's leadership without hesitation. Inside the clinic, Rebecca and James could only watch and wait, hoping help would arrive before Blackwood decided to escalate the conflict even further. The hybrid cub's whimper cut through the chaos outside, drawing Rebecca's attention immediately. She rushed to the makeshift nest of blankets where the tiny creature lay, her trained eye catching subtle changes that sent alarm bells ringing through her mind. "James!" she called out, her fingers gently probing the cub's gums. "Something's wrong. The deterioration is happening too fast for simple malnutrition." James hurried over from his computer, where he'd been coordinating with his FBI contacts. His face paled as he observed the cub's symptoms: shallow breathing, dilated pupils, and an unnaturally rapid heartbeat. "This isn't natural," Rebecca said, her voice tight with concern. "The decline is too systematic. Look at these neurological responses." She shone a small light into the cub's eyes, noting the delayed reaction. James leaned closer, his scientific mind processing the symptoms. "Memory erasure drugs," he said suddenly. "Some collectors want their exotic pets with no history, no attachment to previous owners. It's a common black market practice." Rebecca's hands clenched into fists. "They poisoned it deliberately. We need to act now, or we'll lose it." She moved with purpose, gathering supplies from her depleted inventory. The sounds of the siege intensified outside, barking, shouting, and the occasional thud of something heavy hitting the clinic's walls. "My FBI contact says they're mobilizing," James reported, helping Rebecca arrange her medical equipment. "But they're at least 45 minutes out. Will the cub last that long?" "Not without intervention." Rebecca's voice was steady despite the pressure. She had already pulled on surgical gloves and was preparing an IV line. "I need to flush its system and stabilize the vital organs. It's going to be risky. This isn't exactly a standard procedure." A loud crash from the front of the building made them both jump. Zeus's answering bark reassured them the defense was holding, but time was clearly running out. "Tell me what you need," James said, falling naturally into the role of surgical assistant. Rebecca worked with focused intensity, inserting the tiny IV line with expert precision while explaining her plan. "We need to introduce a binding agent to neutralize the poison, but the dosage is crucial. Too much could shock the system, too little won't stop the damage." Outside, the sounds of conflict grew louder. Blackwood's voice carried through the walls, ordering his men to use more aggressive tactics. The animal army responded with increased ferocity, but the pressure was mounting. Rebecca administered the first round of medication, her hands steady despite the chaos. James monitored the cub's vital signs, calling out numbers as Rebecca made minute adjustments to the treatment. The creature's small body fought against the poison, its human-like features contorted in pain. "Come on, little one," Rebecca whispered, adding another carefully measured medication to the IV. "Fight with us." The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Each moment brought more intense attacks from Blackwood's forces, more desperate defense from Zeus's army, and more tension as Rebecca and James watched for signs their treatment was working. Finally, after what seemed like hours, but was really only 20 minutes, the cub's breathing began to stabilize. Its heartbeat settled into a more natural rhythm, and its small paws flexed with renewed strength. "It's working," James said, relief evident in his voice as he checked the vital signs again. "The poison levels are dropping." Rebecca allowed herself a small smile, gently stroking the cub's fur. "Now we just need to hold out until—" A new sound cut through the air, distant sirens growing closer by the second. James rushed to the window, his face breaking into a grin. "FBI tactical units," he confirmed. "They're finally here." The FBI tactical team swarmed into the clinic with practiced precision, their weapons trained on Blackwood and his mercenaries. Special Agent Sarah Martinez took command of the scene, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Marcus Blackwood, you're under arrest for illegal genetic experimentation and multiple violations of federal law." Blackwood's face twisted with rage as agents secured his hands behind his back. "You don't understand what I've accomplished," he snarled, his eyes fixed not on the agents, but on Zeus, who stood protectively near Rebecca and the recovering hybrid cub. Rebecca watched the scene unfold while monitoring her tiny patient's vital signs. The cub's breathing had stabilized, its small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm that spoke of victory over the poison. James squeezed her shoulder in silent congratulation. "My work was necessary," Blackwood continued, his voice rising with desperate intensity. "After Tommy died, I had no choice. I had to bring him back." The name sent a ripple through the room. Zeus's ears perked up, and his amber eyes fixed on Blackwood with an unsettling intelligence. "Your son died 10 years ago," Agent Martinez said, checking her notes. "What does that have to do with these illegal experiments?" Blackwood laughed, a broken sound that held no humor. "You're looking at him right now." He jerked his head toward Zeus. "I found a way to preserve Tommy's memories, his consciousness. The genetic manipulation worked. It brought my son back in a new form." Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth as understanding dawned. She looked at Zeus, at Tommy, with new eyes, seeing now why he had seemed so different from any animal she'd ever known. The profound sadness in his gaze, the deliberate way he had sought her help, his extraordinary ability to organize and lead other animals, it all made terrible sense. Zeus moved forward slowly, his powerful frame carrying himself with dignity despite the weight of the revelation. He stopped in front of Blackwood, and father and son locked eyes in a moment of profound recognition. "I did it for you, Tommy," Blackwood whispered, his arrogance crumbling into grief. "Everything was for you." Zeus's response was to turn away from his father and walk back to the hybrid cub, nosing it gently. The message was clear. His father's actions, no matter their motivation, had caused innocent creatures to suffer. His choice to bring the dying cub to Rebecca had been an act of redemption, a determination to prevent another innocent life from being twisted by his father's desperate experiments. "He's been trying to stop you?" Rebecca said softly, understanding flooding through her. "Every action he took, protecting the cub, organizing the other animals, bringing them here, it wasn't just about saving one life. He was trying to end the experiments that turned him into this." The truth hung heavy in the air as FBI agents led Blackwood away. Zeus watched his father go, his intelligent eyes holding a mixture of sorrow and resolution. He had sacrificed his chance to remain quietly hidden, exposing himself and his true identity, all to protect others from suffering his fate. In the days following Blackwood's dramatic arrest, federal agents swarmed his network of secret facilities across 3 states. What they discovered was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Dozens of hybrid creatures, each one a testament to Blackwood's twisted experiments, were found in various stages of transformation. Some whimpered with eerily human sounds, while others displayed physical features that blurred the line between animal and human. Rebecca stood in her newly renovated clinic, now barely recognizable from its humble beginnings. Fresh paint brightened the walls, and state-of-the-art medical equipment filled the expanded treatment rooms. A brass plaque near the entrance read, "Cedar Falls Hybrid Animal Sanctuary, a federal protection facility." "I still can't believe how much has changed," she said softly to James, who stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. James adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, a small smile playing at his lips. "Your dedication made this possible, Rebecca. The government couldn't ignore the evidence we gathered, and my research foundation support just helped speed things along." Zeus padded quietly into the room, his amber eyes reflecting an awareness that still took Rebecca's breath away. Knowing his true identity, that he was once Tommy Blackwood, added layers of meaning to every interaction. He approached them and gently nudged Rebecca's hand with his nose. "He's telling us the new arrivals are ready for their checkups," Rebecca explained, having learned to read Zeus's subtle communications. The German shepherd's tail wagged once in confirmation. The sanctuary now housed 28 rescued hybrids, each one requiring specialized care that only Rebecca, with her unique experience and Zeus's assistance, could provide. The former struggling veterinarian had become the world's leading expert in hybrid animal medicine, with James's research foundation providing crucial scientific support. Walking through the facility, Rebecca paused to check on their first rescue, the wolf cub hybrid that had started it all. The small creature had grown stronger under her care, its human-like eyes now bright with health instead of fear. Zeus spent extra time with this particular hybrid, perhaps seeing a reflection of his own transformation in its journey to safety. "You know," James said, taking Rebecca's hand as they watched Zeus guide the younger hybrid through basic training exercises, "5 years ago, I thought leaving was the right choice for my career. I've never been so glad to be wrong." Rebecca squeezed his hand, remembering how their shared crisis had revealed the strength of their connection. "We needed to grow into the people we are now," she replied. "Everything we've been through, it's given us something real to build on." The sanctuary's success had exceeded anyone's expectations. With federal funding ensuring its future and James's foundation providing research support, Rebecca's financial worries had vanished. More importantly, she had found her true calling. Every rescued hybrid that came through their doors represented another life saved from the kind of exploitation that had created Zeus. Zeus looked up from his training session, those intelligent eyes meeting Rebecca's with understanding. He was more than just a patient or a helper. He was her partner in this mission, bringing his unique perspective as both victim and survivor to their shared work of healing and protection. The former Tommy Blackwood had found his own form of peace, turning his father's cruel experiment into a force for good. Together, they had created something remarkable, a safe haven where the impossible creatures born of human cruelty could find protection, understanding, and a chance to thrive. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the sanctuary's windows, Rebecca made her final rounds. The newly installed observation area allowed her to watch the outdoor enclosure, where Zeus had taken on his most important role yet, mentor to their growing family of hybrid creatures. The recovered wolf hybrid cub, now strong and energetic after months of intensive care, bounded across the grass with a playfulness that brought tears to Rebecca's eyes. Gone were the signs of malnutrition and fear that had marked their first meeting. Instead, the little creature moved with confidence, its unique features, neither fully wolf nor fully human, no longer a mark of shame, but a testament to survival. Zeus stood watchfully nearby, his powerful form alert but relaxed as he supervised the cub's interaction with two other rescued hybrids, a fox-like creature with unusually dexterous paws and a small bear cub whose eyes held the same unsettling intelligence as Zeus's own. Rebecca watched as Zeus intervened with gentle authority when play became too rough, using subtle body language and soft vocalizations that the hybrids seemed to understand perfectly. "It's amazing how he knows exactly what they need," James said, joining Rebecca at the window. "He remembers being human, but he also understands their animal nature. He's the perfect bridge between their two worlds." Rebecca nodded, thinking about how far they'd all come. Zeus could have let his transformation bitter him, she reflected. Instead, he's turned it into something beautiful, teaching these little ones how to embrace who they are now, not who they were meant to be. Through the glass, they watched as Zeus demonstrated proper social behavior to the wolf hybrid cub, showing how to approach the sanctuary's normal animals, rescued dogs and cats, without frightening them. The cub mimicked Zeus's careful movements, learning to control its stronger hybrid instincts. "They're all learning to coexist," Rebecca observed, "not just surviving, but truly living." She placed her hand against the cool glass, remembering the desperate night Zeus had first appeared at her clinic. "We couldn't save Tommy Blackwood, but Zeus found a way to honor his memory by saving others." The sanctuary had become more than just a medical facility. It was a place of healing for wounded spirits. Rebecca had witnessed remarkable transformations in both the hybrid creatures and the human staff who cared for them. Former research assistants from Blackwood's facilities, haunted by guilt over their involvement, now volunteered their time to help care for the rescued hybrids. They found redemption in gentle service rather than exploitation. Zeus gathered his small group of students, leading them through what Rebecca recognized as their evening routine. The wolf hybrid cub, once so close to death, now moved with graceful confidence under Zeus's guidance. Together, they made their way to the feeding station, where Zeus demonstrated proper sharing behavior, another lesson that blended human ethics with animal instincts. "Look at how the little one watches him," James pointed out. "There's such trust there." Rebecca smiled, noting how the cub had positioned itself to mirror Zeus's posture. Zeus knows what it's like to wake up in a body that feels wrong, to struggle with memories that don't match your new reality. He's teaching them that different doesn't mean broken. The sanctuary's success had drawn attention from around the world, but Rebecca maintained strict protocols about privacy and protection. These creatures deserved peace, not exploitation as scientific curiosities. Zeus had helped her design security measures that accounted for both human and animal threats, creating a truly safe haven. As evening approached, Rebecca watched Zeus guide his charges to their sleeping areas. The wolf hybrid cub paused to nuzzle against Zeus's side, before curling up in its bed, displaying the kind of contentment that had once seemed impossible for these traumatized creatures. "This is what healing looks like," Rebecca said softly. "Not trying to undo what can't be changed, but finding new ways to move forward." Zeus completed his evening duties and made his way back to Rebecca's side. His amber eyes held the wisdom of both his human past and his animal present, a unique perspective that made him invaluable in their work. He pressed against her leg gently, and Rebecca knelt to embrace him. "Thank you," she whispered, knowing he understood. "Thank you for showing us the way." The sanctuary settled into its peaceful evening routine, a sharp contrast to the chaos and fear that had marked its beginning. Through the windows, the last rays of sunlight illuminated a scene of tranquility, hybrid creatures resting safely under Zeus's watchful care, each one a living reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal with time, love, and understanding. In this moment, Rebecca knew they had created something precious, a place where the impossible became possible, where trauma transformed into triumph, and where the cycle of exploitation had been broken in favor of protection and care. Zeus had shown them all that the path to peace lay not in changing what was, but in accepting and protecting what is. Thank you for watching. If even one moment stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow with another story that speaks to the heart.